welcome to another episode of Train Lee Installations. Today I'm reviewing the installation I just completed on this USA Trains GP30 Burlington locomotive. I used a Zimo MS950 series decoder with a sound project already updated for 16-bit for the 16-bit decoder. However, I also did some programming for it. The problem with a lot of USA trains is as I like to describe it, they are wired backwards, meaning they use a common ground rather than a common positive. Decoders are set up to use a common positive, and each function out for the decoders is actually the ground or negative portion of it, so they pull the circuit down. So oftentimes I have to rewire USA Trains lighting boards and so on. This one was a little bit more of a challenge because it actually has 3 different lighting boards on it. It has the lighting board for the LEDs on the front. It has a lighting board in the cab for the number boards, the lights, and the cab light. Well, I had to separate the headlights, the number boards, and the cab light. The original lighting board was kind of an early version on it, as the locomotive is an early model, and so I added lighting specific for the number boards with some surface mount LEDs, and then I added a surface mount LED for the cab light using the original headlights. The rear one, I just separated the lights from the numbers and the headlights, and then also separated the control for the LEDs. All the LEDs were replaced with a common positive, or rather than a common negative on them. And so all 4 LEDs have been, bicolored LEDs have been replaced. This allows me to advance the programming and gives me independent control over the lights, allowing me to do some interesting things. Initially, on basic running, it operates as it did originally, with the lights turning green in the front for forward, and red in the back when it's going forward, and vice versa when the locomotive changes directions. However, now the number boards are independently controlled, at least in the programming. I don't give that option under normal operation. And then the cab light I also have independent control of. I turn it off and on at specific times. Normally it's turned on with the headlights, and then with movement the cab light turns off. So I'll go ahead and review those. The first thing is I go ahead and start up the sound, which is the other thing is when I program a decoder, I assign the decoder address or the locomotive address as whatever the road number is. In this particular case, it is 950. So its DCC address is 950. So I'll go ahead and turn on the sound, which gives a startup and shutdown sound, and that is F8. And then F0 to turn on the headlights. And as you see, the lights turn colors based off the directions, and I'll show that. And the smoke I already turned on, which was F6. It should have given a nice puff of smoke, but it didn't, so we'll go ahead and briefly show that. There you go. And I just moved it back a tiny bit. So if you notice, what happens when I start moving the locomotive, the cab light turned off automatically. And then as soon as the locomotive stops moving, that cab light turns back on. This is under normal operation, so it takes a little bit to get the locomotive actually moving. I'm just running it really slow, so it stops much faster. Okay. And then we have F1 for the bell. Turn that off. It takes it a second. F2 for the horn. This is a playable horn, meaning as long as you have F2 locked, it plays the sound, or pressed down, it plays the sound. And then you have, let's see, F3. So F3 is the brake key. I can raise and lower the engine sound, but also, let's see, when you move it, if you press F3, the locomotive comes to a stop. Back it up here. So without pressing F3, it just goes until I press F3, and then it'll stop. And it puts out a tremendous amount of smoke, as you can see. Let me stop that. And then, so F4 is the shunting key. Now, F4 I do some interesting things with the lights. I turn both the marker lights, the front and the rear marker lights, as red, and I turn on both the front and the rear headlights. And then the number boards stay on. And now, when in F4, the cab light stays locked on. It doesn't turn off with movement. It also changes the momentum of the locomotive, or essentially turns it off. And it locks the sound of the engine. So it stays at the same speed with movement. This is, let's see, there it goes. That's F4, that's shunting mode. F5, when the cab light is turned on automatically, allows you to turn the cab light off. If the cab light isn't turned on, it allows you to turn the cab light on. So you can, it gives you independent control over the cab light. Now when it's turned on this way, it doesn't automatically turn off. So I'll go turn the lights back on. And if you notice, the cab light came back on. So F5 is kind of a cab light override function, if you will. And then, let's see, F6, as I said, was already turned on, which is the smoke. And then F7 gives that coupling sound, as if you're coupling up. F8 turns on and off the drive sounds, so we'll go ahead and I'll give you the shutdown sequence here. And go ahead and start it back up. There it goes. There it gave a big puff of smoke as it started up. F9 and 10 are volume controls. F9 increases the volume and F10 decreases the volume. F11 and 12 are, well, I'll show you. F11 raises the sound of the engine, speeds it up. To that speed step. And let's see, if I release F11, it lowers the engine idle back down. And then F12 increases it a next step up. You have to hit F11, and then you can hit F12. Let's see, it'll get up to it'll stay there. And if I hit F12, it'll go up even faster. So I release F12, and now I'll go ahead and release F11 again. So those are the basic functions of this particular locomotive. Thanks for watching.